online across Central and Eastern Europe, and not only. From what I know, we have people joining us in the US as well in the middle of the night. So thank you very much for that. My name is Andrew Rogel, and I am the leader of Tech Emerging Europe Advocates. Tech Emerging Europe Advocates is run by Emerging Europe. Emerging Europe is a news, community, and intelligence organization based here in London, and we cover 23 countries of Central and Eastern Europe. Tech Emerging Europe Advocates is slightly broader. This community covers 25 countries based in Central and Eastern Europe and also Central Asia. When we look at the region, we obviously see that the region has been developing in a very fast way. There's a lot of innovation coming from the region. There's a lot of creativity coming from the region. But at the same time, despite this solid growth rates, the region still has a couple of challenges that it is facing, especially when it comes to the economic agenda. And one of them is the fact that the region relies on labor-intensive production. And I want to give you an example here. If you look at the Czech Republic, or Techiia, the automotive sector is responsible for 10% of the country's GDP and also 20% of the country's exports. And recently, the semiconductor shortage has resulted in the fact that the biggest car manufacturer in Czechia, and this is Škoda, which is owned by Volkswagen, is going to produce 250,000 cars less because of that shortage. So that shows that manufacturing and labor-intensive sectors have such an impact on the economy. The only way going forward is to rely on innovation, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. So things like decarbonization, digitalization are definitely ways going forward. And Emerging Europe, Tech Emerging Europe Advocates, our community of tech entrepreneurs, leaders, experts, and investors who are eager to create a tech hub in Central and Eastern Europe, the organization triggers discussion about the future of the region. A few months ago, in September, we organized an event called "The Future of Sustainability or the Future of Emerging Europe, or the Future of Sustainability in Emerging Europe." If you are interested in the topic, feel free to download the latest report, which is called "The Future of Sustainability in Emerging Europe." You will find out more about what the region has already done in that area. Speaking about reports, in the next couple of weeks, right after the new year, we're going to release the second edition of another report, which is called "The Future of IT in Emerging Europe," and you will have a full understanding of what is happening in the sector across the region. But I said that the organization triggers discussion about the future of the region, and today we are also talking about, we're going to talk about sustainability, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, and we have prepared an interesting agenda for today. We're going to look at the startup ecosystem in Central and Eastern Europe. In order to do that, we've invited the managing partner of Alphabet, which is a venture and capital organization. We will also look at the macroeconomic situation, and we will be joined by the CEO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange Tech. We will later look at a number of startups coming from Central and Eastern Europe. We've prepared an early startup innovation showcase. We've invited 5 startups to join us today. And we're later going to look at how the most recent developments here in the UK, especially in Glasgow, and I'm talking about COP26, how that can help us drive more cooperation between the United Kingdom and Central and Eastern Europe. So without further ado, I would like to invite my first guest. This is going to be Bartosz Wikicki. He's already with us. Bartosz, can you hear us?
Hi, Andrew. How are everyone?
Awesome. I think we need to turn up the volume a little bit so I can hear Bartosz better. So ready to start, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. We just need to turn up the volume on our end a little bit so I can hear you a little bit better. So if we look at the startup ecosystem in Central and Eastern Europe, we're talking about tech companies in the region being now valued almost 190 billion euros. We're talking about an increase of, a 19-fold increase compared to the end of the last decade. And also, we're talking about startups raising over 4 billion euros in venture capital funding. I wanted to start with a question, a very overall question. How you see the startup ecosystem as the managing partner at Alpha?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Andrew, and great having you and being here with you. I would typically be in Shoreditch every month, but these times I can join you online. And I primarily look at the ecosystem and at the region from the perspective of a venture capital investor, seed and early stage, and primarily looking at enterprise software companies going global. However, coming from the emerging region of Central Eastern Europe, right? And definitely the ecosystem and the region is booming. Yeah, it's like it's never been before. And there are certain factors that make it happen, I believe. And primarily it is the engineering talent pool. So probably every global tech company already has a service, IT, and R&D center in the region across the Baltics, Poland, Czech Republic, Romania, and more. And that's the the base ground for creating a tech ecosystem. And what's very interesting, we could see it at a recent report by Atomico, Dealroom, and Google for startups, is that 31% of the unicorns coming from the region have been bootstrapped, compared to just 7% in the rest of the world. This is incredible. And following on that on HackerRank's list, software engineers from the region rank top. So in top 10 countries, 3 are in the region of Central Eastern Europe, and even more of the countries and of the software engineers from the region rank as they never give up, right? So if you combine those, it's a fantastic engineering talent pool. Global companies invest there already. You have fantastic software engineers who never give up. Yeah, this is definitely a starting point to build a fantastic tech ecosystem.
So if you look at the region, it's not only countries like Poland, it's not only countries like Ukraine, which are the biggest countries in the region, but there's also the Baltic states, like you mentioned, and there's a huge group of countries in the southern or southeastern part of the region. How do you see the whole map and the startup ecosystem in across the entire region, not only the biggest countries?
Right. I think that the recent year has changed a lot and has given us a fantastic opportunity. So the region, as you mentioned, Andrew, is 20 or more countries that you cover. Yes, it's super fragmented. It's a lot of relatively small countries, and it's the moment in time like never where we can actually, being anywhere, connect online and do our job. It's not as we meet in person, but it's actually happening, and it's more possible than it's ever been. So I think this is one of the great opportunities, is the very fragmented region of relatively small countries is able to connect now, and we see many similarities across the region. Like it's an emerging region, like it's fantastic engineering talent pool having a lot of global investments in R&D, and like we have people and founders, entrepreneurs driven to start a tech business and to prove the world they can do it.
But if you look at our region, it seems that every single country always looks towards the West. And in fact, if you look at the potential of the region, we're talking, when I look at the 25 countries that Technology Europe applicants cover, we're talking about 300 million people. That's an enormous population altogether. Yet, it seems that we tend to look West instead of actually utilizing the potential that is within the region. And it seems that we don't collaborate enough within the region. What's your take on that?
Maybe, yes. So I have to admit, I look probably bottom up and at only a part of the region. However, as I said, it's both the online presence that now is an opportunity to work together more. It's also that primarily the region being rich in engineering talent pool is great in starting tech companies. However, it's also, to me, understandable that those companies and those founders primarily start where they're from, but they actually target large software markets or large global markets. Yeah, so it's natural that they go towards Western larger countries, towards the US or towards Asian markets, because just those are larger markets. So those markets offer just more consumers, more enterprise businesses. So I would understand that. Now, what's very positive, and in the previously mentioned report also showcased, is that most of the tech companies starting up in the region actually stay in the region, and they may move their sales and business development, and some of the founders may relocate to target larger direct markets. However, still their R&D, IT, typically operations, stay in the region, and that's very positive trend as well.
Yeah, before we started this session, we actually had a discussion here that there are plenty of unicorns within, or coming from Central and Eastern Europe, but they're actually now based elsewhere. And we can take Grammarly as an example. We can take UiPath as another example. Do you think there is something we can do to make sure that these companies end up staying in Central and Eastern Europe as opposed to actually changing their headquarters and moving them over to, let's say, the US or here to London?
Right. Yeah, it's true that many of those companies relocate. However, still majority keep their tech here in the region. And I think one of the reasons they move, besides tapping at a large direct market, is access to capital. And this is still a lot to do. So the whole region of Central Eastern Europe, including Southern Eastern, has several times less capital than a single market of Germany or the UK. So that's definitely something to be improved. and that could also motivate more of those tech companies to stay in the region, where their also capital is from, where their supporters are, still tapping on larger direct markets, however, keeping more of the company locally here in the region.
Do you think that the region should somehow focus on a specific vertical, for example, or a specific focus on specific areas that could be, the region's specialty?
Right. I'm a bit bullish on enterprise software because that's primarily our focus, and that's an interesting segment because 1/3 of venture capital investments, venture capital going to startups in the region is actually in enterprise software. And I understand that because of the investments in R&D, because of the engineering talent pool and greatly skilled software engineers. However, so this is definitely number one, very strong, also strengthened by definitely UiPath, but also many other companies, ICI, Informatica, and so on. Other segments pretty strong have been gaming, food, also transportation. So there are a few segments that we actually outperform in and against other regions in Europe, and I think it's smart to start building on that.
And how do you see sustainability in all of that? I mean, this particular session or this event is focused on building sustainability capabilities, if you will, and drawing people's attention to the future. So how do you see that aspect being developed or looked at by startups in Central and Eastern Europe?
Yeah, so this is to me extremely important, and I would start with looking at sustainability as looking at physical and mental health of the startup founders, because those are people who have typically skin in the game, who commit 100% or more to their business, and not like typical, executives or even athletes. They don't have that level of support. Many of the startup founders are on their own, and definitely sustainability here is extremely important to keep on starting up, growing, and scaling up the company globally. This is super important, and definitely that's a challenge, especially being an emerging region and having this motivation to prove we can do it and we can conquer the world. And I think one of the solutions would be actually to democratize more access to venture capital. So I sit in Warsaw, Poland now, and however, I know that some of the countries across the region don't have that relatively good access to venture capital or that number of venture capital funds around them, and that can be a challenge. So democratizing access to VC also increases competition between the VCs, and certain important matters like sustainability or mental physical health of the founders become more and more important because there are certain VC players who take care of that.
So what do you see as the next sort of big thing coming from Central and Eastern Europe?
That's a good question. That's the question I'm asking myself every day. It's what's the next big thing, and definitely to me is a lot based on enterprise software. Also because some of the founders from the region built fantastic companies in the US, like PayPal, Databricks, Snowflakes, or UiPath, and that paves the the path and motivates people. But definitely there's a lot going on in in decentralization. A lot built on blockchain technologies, and we have several companies from the region really strong and emerging in that segment. There's also a lot going on in like decentralized energy. So I mean like decentralized virtual solar power plant. It's actually one of the companies we've invested in recently, and on top of that network of decentralized points of solar energy, they're building enterprise software to actually manage that process. So such companies definitely maybe the next big thing, and they are starting up in the region, which is great, of course.
The final word, any advice to startup founders, to look at or to consider things that will be important in the future?
I think primarily it is so important to build on your experience, competence, and on market challenges and opportunities. That's primarily, I would say, the most important, because that's your strength, right? In the same time, is quite important to watch those mega trends, like even metaverse, or other words, Internet of 3D, in simple words, or decentralized world. You don't have to connect there if your business model or your company doesn't connect primarily, but keep it in mind, because it's happening faster than actually ever.
Perfect. Thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully see you in Warsaw or in London next time.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the event in Shoreditch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to be joined by another speaker from Warsaw, actually. Witold Wilimski is the CEO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange tech company. Witold, can you hear us? I think you're on mute.
Yes, it's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, but barely. Can you say something just for us to double check that the connection is good?
Yes. Hello, Andrew, again. Can you hear me or not?
Okay, perfect. So I would like to take a broader look at Central and Eastern Europe. In the first part, we were talking about the startup ecosystem. Now we're going to look a bit on the macroeconomic side of things. So, the last 2 years have been quite challenging for everyone, also for countries like Poland, like the rest of Central and Eastern Europe. And I would like to ask you, what kind of trends have developed since the beginning of the pandemic, and what the macroeconomic situation in the region is going to be like going forward, or is now?
Sorry, I cannot hear you. Could you? I have to switch to another. 1 second.
Hello, 1, 2, 3.
Yes, could you repeat the question, please?
Okay, sure. So I was saying that the last 2 years have been quite challenging for pretty much everybody, and I would like you to give us a broader view on the macroeconomic situation and what how the region has been developing and how it has been growing over the last 2 years, and what are we facing right now?
So I think that everybody knows that the macroeconomic situation is not very good in the European Union now. When we are analyzing the GDP growth during 2020, we know that it was negative. It was in average 6.5% minus, and of course we have a kind of better growth in 2021, but we don't know what will be the situation in 2022. I think that one of the biggest problem is the level of governmental debt. And I think that this level is very high now in Greece, in Italy, in Portugal. And comparing the situation that we had during the previous crisis in 2008, 2009, I think that the situation is worse. Because everybody knows that the inflation is approaching now. We know what is the policy of European Central Bank with interest rates close to zero. And we know that the European Central Bank have to fight with the inflation, which means that we have to wait to some next steps. And we know that the interest rates will be higher than now. And of course, the consequence of the situation will be that the governmental debt, which is high in Southern Europe, as I told, the cost of this governmental debt will be huge for governmental budgets.
Do you think that the situation in Central and Eastern Europe is slightly better than the rest of the European Union or the rest of Europe?
Yes, in my opinion, yes, because the governmental debt in average is lower than 60% in Central European countries. I mean, in Poland, in Hungary, in Bulgaria, in Romania, and from this point of view, the situation is better. And of course, another aspect which is quite important, this is the level of the social security that we have in the region is completely different than in Western Europe. And I think that this is, of course, the consequence of the communist system, but this is something good because we as a government, we are spending less money on social security, and that is why our governmental debts are lower. Which means that we can spend more money on the infrastructure, on the technology, on the education, and all these aspects are kind of triggers for the GDP development in the future.
When I started this session, I was saying that the challenge that Central and Eastern Europe has is that we rely on labor-intensive sectors. And I gave an example of Techiia, or the Czech Republic, where the manufacturing sector plays an important role, 10% of the GDP, and also 20% of export. And now with the semiconductor shortage situation, the Czech Republic is going to Škoda, the main manufacturer in Czechia, will produce 250,000 cars less than they did before. So what do you think? Of course, the answer here is to look at innovation and technology, but how do you see that from your perspective?
I think the manufacturing sector in Central and Eastern Europe is quite important, but of course this is not the future. I can give you the example of the Polish economy. In Poland, in terms of export, we are an exporter to Germany that the export level is higher than the French export, which means that in terms of manufacturing, the region is very strong, but the future, in my opinion, this is the technology, this is the fintech sector, And what we can observe that in terms of technical education, we are very strong. I mean, we are stronger than France, than Italy. And this is one of the very important aspects of our future development. And this is not only the case of Poland, this is the case of Baltic states or, for example, Romania.
And we're talking about innovation, but also this particular event is focused on sustainable growth. How do you see the sustainable growth going forward in Central and Eastern Europe?
This is a complex. This is a very complex agenda for our region. And we have a kind of heritage of the communism period, and this is related to the fact that our economy and our electricity production is based on coal, and this is a kind of big problem because for the sustainable growth, we need green energy. And of course, we can produce wind energy, we can produce solar energy, but based only on these two segments, we are not able to cover the whole demand that we have for the electricity in the country. So we have a lot of discussion on this topic in Poland, and I think that we will follow the same way that France, for example, where the supply of nuclear power energy is around 70% of the whole demand in the country.
And I know that the Warsaw Stock Exchange Group is a huge driver of ESG, which is environmental, social governance, for example. How do you see that being developed in the mindsets of entrepreneurs? Do you see the public sector driving that in the region, or on the contrary, rather the private sector understanding that this is sort of the future of growth?
I think that it starts to be an important topic. We are promoting the ESG as a Warsaw Stock Exchange, but I think that we are at the beginning of the trip here in this area. Of course, we've implemented the ESG policy in Warsaw Stock Exchange, and we are suggesting to do it to all enterprises that are listed in Warsaw.
And what does that mean for investors? How do you see investors looking at the importance of ESG? When it comes to startups, for example?
In my opinion, it starts to be important from the point of view of institutional investors from foreign countries. I think that institutional investors from Poland are not involved in a very huge scale in the ESG. But I think in the same time that ESG starts to be important for young individual investors. And in Poland, in Warsaw, the percentage of individual investors is relatively high. And I think that for the young generation, I mean, the people that have 20 or 30 years, it starts to be very important.
I have to admit that I was quite surprised when I went to Israel about a month or 6 weeks ago, and it seemed really interesting to see that the whole startup ecosystem in Israel developed so much. At the same time, the understanding of ESG, of sustainability, is not really that developed. So you have this huge gap between the developed startup ecosystem and also the understanding of ESG. Do you think that this is really that important for for the future growth of entrepreneurship, sustainable entrepreneurship in our region?
I think that there's a huge. We have a huge gap, and there is a lot of things that we have to do in this area.
And so just a quick question to sort of summarize. You were talking about at the beginning. You were talking about the differences between the EU and also Central and Eastern Europe. And I wanted to ask you about protectionism in both the EU and the region. How do you see that being developed going forward?
Yes, this is a relatively new topic in the European Union, but this is a consequence of huge flow and growing importance of FDIs. Foreign direct investment made by a state-controlled enterprise from China. And I think that in this area, Europe is trying to adopt the same legal acts that have been adopted in the United States in 2007. Europe started that give a possibility to stop investment made by state-controlled enterprises in 2019. And we've adopted the same law in Poland, in Hungary, in France, and in Germany. I think that this is a kind of consequence of the situation that we had in Europe in 2008 and 2009 during the previous crisis, when, for example, Volvo and Land Rover. Sorry, can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Yes, this was the moment when Volvo and Land Rover started to be a Chinese and Indian company. In 2018, there was a big discussion in Germany concerning the producer of robots, KUKA, that was acquired by a Chinese company. So I think that Europe is starting to think about its own technology, about the security, and the protectionism is a kind of answer to the growing role of state-controlled enterprise from China, from Russia, and from other countries.
But do you think that this will affect the development of Central and Eastern Europe?
I think that no, because in terms of technology, we are not so strong that Western European countries. So there will be no any influence or high influence of this new protectionism.
You are the CEO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange Tech. So I would like to ask you why tech is so important for the Warsaw Stock Exchange Group.
So this is the same situation as in the New York Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange, or Deutsche Börse. All exchanges are trying to diversify their incomes. And as you know, a stock exchange nowadays is a technological company. So that is why all these companies are trying to create their own technological branches and are trying to sell the technology to other partners.
But I think that the Warsaw Stock Exchange has gone a little bit further than that, and then the results are already visible. It seems that there's more gaming companies, for example, listed in Warsaw than in Tokyo. When the first, up until recently, Tokyo was actually #1 when it comes to that particular sector. And we were talking about the development of gaming being one of the key verticals that have the potential to develop in Central and Eastern Europe, in countries like Poland.
Yes, of course. The Warsaw Stock Exchange now is the main market for game producers. It's true, but this is related to the fact that, as I told you, in terms of IT education, we are very strong, and this is a sector very well developed in Poland and quite attractive for companies from not only the Central European region, but from the whole world.
But the Warsaw Stock Exchange has also developed a wide range of products that can help other stock exchanges go into that technical or technological area.
Yes, we have. We are working now on the new trading system, and this new trading system will replace the system that we have now. And of course, we will sell the system not to Western European stock exchanges, but we are more concentrated on the Central European region, on the Middle East, and on Asia, in terms of the new trading system.
So I think this will be my final question about regional cooperation, because we were saying earlier that it seems that our countries are often, targeting, or they often target Western Europe or the US, as opposed to actually utilizing the potential that is here in Central and Eastern Europe. But it seems that the countries of Central and Eastern Europe could actually cooperate more with each other, as opposed to trying to look only west. Do you agree with that statement?
We are talking about the cooperation of countries, of Central European countries, yes, in terms of technology development.
But also, I'm talking about any kind of cooperation between the countries, and that can be the private or the public sector. Our emerging Europe is currently running an interest or developing a piece of research which is focused on digital health solutions, and we can see that there could have been more work done and more solutions developed if countries of Central and Eastern Europe actually help each other develop those solutions. They tend to go to other bigger markets, but when it comes to clinical trials, for example, they don't even look within their region. And this is something that has been quite visible recently since the pandemic started.
So I think that here we have two aspects. The first one, this is the cooperation of governments in terms of the development of the infrastructure. And I'm talking about the infrastructure that can connect the region, the southern part with the northern part of the region. And similar projects have been done in European Union, in all the EU member states a few years ago. So we have to start this cooperation, and we have to build a good infrastructure which will be a good kind of connector between our countries. And this is from the governmental point of view. But from the point of view of private firms, I think that one of the good examples of the technological development in the region, this is the growing importance of Asseco Poland, a Polish IT company, which have developed with a very good and big success the activity in Central Europe, in Czech Republic, in Slovakia, and in South and Eastern Europe. This is a very good example of cooperation and the creation of good value added in the region in terms of technology.
I very much hope that the 3Cs initiative will also contribute to a further cooperation between the countries. Vito, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And for all the insight. Hopefully see you in Warsaw, or maybe again in London, but perhaps in person, not online. Thank you very much.
Andrew, thank you very much for the invitation, and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next step is what I promised earlier today. Like I said, we invited quite a few different startups that are focused on sustainability and sustainable solutions. And I will invite my colleague right now, Eric, who is the community manager for Tech Emerging Europe Advocates, who is going to present the 5 startups that have been chosen as the ones that are participating in this showcase. Eric, the floor is
yours. Thank you, Andrew. It is my pleasure actually to present these 5 startups that we have selected from across our region. That will be honored. There were many more, and we will showcase them in our own media channels. But today, let's present these top 5. The team is helping me with their presentation. I would like to go first to North Macedonia and present Challenger to you, a startup that is founded in 2019, which is a digital tool that rewards individuals' eco-friendly behavior while helping businesses become socially and environmentally responsible. What this startup is actually doing, it is a community builder, a marketplace that consists of both these sides, the individuals and the businesses. For the individuals, it rewards their habits which are environmentally friendly, and on the other side, for the business itself, it helps in creating a greener brand awareness. So far, Challenger has a community of 7,000 active users and 6,000 euros generated revenue. And what they are looking right now from us all and everyone that can support is actually investment of 150,000 euros or partners that could help in their international expansion. The other startup is actually coming from Kosovo, and it is Techiia. It is a green and sustainable design living space solution company, which is founded on 2018, and it aims to decrease the price of electricity bills by 30% and reduce 500 kilograms of CO2 emissions from each household. This is an innovative version of self-maintenance vertical greenery application, which actually integrates innovation into concepts that are sustainable. This team is dreaming to reduce energy consumption 90% in an organic way in all urban areas, maybe starting from our emerging Europe region, but going also, why not, beyond borders. And for that, what they are looking for in the future is more international partners and support from across emerging Europe. The next one is actually coming from Slovakia, and I would ask the team to move to the next slide, and let's go to Slovakia now. So we go to RV Magnetic Startups, who have created the smallest passive sensor in the world. This sensor is contributing to the mitigation of climate change by replacing several sensors with just one. These sensors contribute to a client's manufacturing excellence and help reduce its environmental footprint. And this is a neutral sensor, and due to the size of it and also the process of RV Magnetic, it is no longer a need to establish any global plant network. As I mentioned, it comes out from Slovakia and is founded in 2015. What they are looking for right now are strategic partners who can act as their clients or integrators, and who can also productize fully developed technology in the main priority areas that this startup has, which are electric motors, composite materials, smart batteries, constructions and civil engineering, transportation and logistics, and medical technologies as well. So everyone who's maybe coming from these areas might really benefit from getting in touch with the team behind RV Magnetics. And the next one is actually coming from Romania, and is Orgo, which is the next slide that I would also like to jump to and show you the startup who since 2019 shares the vision of humans acting together for a harmonious life. Orgo contributes to this vision by bringing innovation through software and technology for creating better social design. What it is actually is cloud scalable, all-in-one integrated platform that helps organizations to manage their resources and engage their members. All organizations see Orgo as a relevant tool in the context of climate change and social development goal. And their first goal actually is to reach 10 million users at this platform by 2025. So for that, they are asking actually, or looking for 500,000 euros of investment in 18 months of runway, which could help them to achieve product market fit, network impact, and a break-even point. The last one, but of course not least, comes from Ukraine, and it is a startup, Fuelwell, actually originally created in Ukraine in 2013 by the name of IT Primus, but rebranded in 2017 as Fuelwell, and is a project that is dedicated to the automotive industry, decarbonization, and fuel consumption optimization. What they are doing right now is they're solving the problem by developing a ready-to-use next-generation fuel catalyst, which reduces transport emissions by increasing the efficiency of internal combustion engines. Thanks to the catalytic process, its technology allows fuel to burn more fully and reduces up to 90% of toxic emissions. What this team is actually looking for right now is to attract 2,500,000 euros, which they need for R&D expenses, marketing expenses, and legal expenses. These are actually the top 5, which we can also present in our resource hub on our website. Andrew will share more. But as I mentioned, please stay tuned in all our channels because there are many more promising startups across the emerging Europe region. Thank you. Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mary. Yes, like we said, there's quite a few things happening in Central and Eastern Europe, and especially in the sustainability area. It's really a pleasure to be able to showcase these startups because some of the solutions are really great. We are, like Mary said, we are going to present the showcase online on our Tech Emerging Europe Advocates page. So have a look there. There's going to be additional content. There are pitch decks attached there and videos, so there's more information. But we are already joined by our next speakers. I will start with Craig Turk, who is our editor at Emerging Europe. He is going to moderate the next session. He has 2 guests, one online, and there's going to be one more guest joining here. David, can I ask you to join and take a seat? And there was a microphone, but I'm going to give you mine in a second. This session will look at different examples of what has happened in the sustainability area so far, and also considering the fact that we need to act fast to improve the situation as far as our environment is concerned. So that's what the session is going to focus on. Craig, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you're currently located, where you're...
Hang on a second, because we can't hear you properly yet.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Now it's better.
All right, let's try again. You can hear me well? Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Lee's just give me a nod. Well, let me start again. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. Thanks for joining me for this particular discussion and how the region's startups can take some of the challenges that climate change has presented and turn them into business opportunities. As Andrew said, my name is Craig Turb. I'm the editor of Emerging Europe, and I'm personally a champion, I like to think, of the many innovative solutions to to mitigated climate change that the region has produced and is continuing to produce, and hopefully will do so moving on into the future. I think that it's clear that this year has been a pivotal year when it comes to climate change. You know, there have been so many extreme weather events that I think it's been something of a wake-up call for many people, including some of the, you know, the naysayers who, you know, previously hadn't necessarily believed that climate change was real. I think, unfortunately, however, you know, the much heralded, the much hyped up COP26 was something of a disappointment. I think that, you know, once again, we were slightly let down by our governments. So, you know, trying to make this as positive as possible and trying to, you know, look forward a little bit. You know, if our governments have let us down, once again, it's going to be up to the private sector, as it has on so many occasions in the past, you know, not just about climate change, but on so many issues, you know, to ride into the rescue, as it were. You know, we have entrepreneurs are problem solvers, and our region, you know, that we call emerging Europe, is lucky in that it has so many fabulous, innovative entrepreneurs who are as well placed as anyone really to solve the many problems that the climate change has created. Most importantly, solve the past. We are against time here, and I think that the way to do that is to see these challenges as business opportunities to create, you know, thriving businesses. So, you know, without any further ado, let me introduce my, you know, fantastic panel here. We have Li Zhu, who is the managing partner at LXI Capital. She's joining us online. Also joining us online is Dasha Kichuk, who's the CEO and co-founder of EFA, a Ukrainian startup that develops a variety of green products. And in the studio, as Andrew mentioned there, we have David Gilger, who's the founding partner of Blue Lake, an accelerator and venture capital firm which, you know, scouts, invests, and supports in undiscovered startups from emerging markets. So thank you, all of you, for taking the time to join us today. Dasha, I'm going to start the discussion with you because, you know, you're in the chair, as it were. You are running a startup which has already developed a number of solutions. So I think it would be good to kick off with some insight from you on, you know, what those solutions are and why you focused on these particular things.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Craig, and thank you for inviting me for this event. And I will try my best to bring something good for people here, inspiring, or maybe something learning. I'm sorry, I'm fresh.
That's what we want. That's what we're after.
Yeah, inspirational. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm fresh from the dentist, so don't pay attention if I will look weird, but I will try my best. So yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder of EFA. Now, we are solving the problem of the global plastic pollution by creating eco-friendly, recyclable, and renewable disposable products. Our biggest goal is to replace all of the plastic disposables because the COVID crisis unfortunately showed us that the world is impossible without disposables. So our goal here is to replace them and make this world a little bit better and to save people from that. Our first product is a paper toothbrush, the one that I'm holding in my hand. This is fully recyclable and renewable. Also, we have a paper razor. I don't have it right now with me, but we have already developed and presented the first paper razor. And we're developing the whole line of other eco-friendly disposables in order to help people to, in this fight with global plastic pollution in their everyday life, to make it easier. And like, you can find our products in every shop you go, and you can save our planet in very easy steps.
So I'm just going to stay with you for a bit. I mean, is it fair to say that you identified a specific challenge and then came up with something to overcome that challenge? I mean, is that how you approached it?
Yeah, that was a simple identification of the problem when our founder Ilya, when he was traveling and he saw the plastic toothbrush in a hotel, and you used it for 3 minutes and just throw it away afterwards. It just doesn't make any sense. That is why we have decided to make the paper toothbrush at first, because everybody eats, sleeps, and brushes their teeth, hopefully every day. That is why we have decided to make it from paper. And then when we've been working on this product, we've been working on this project, on the startup since 2018, and we have developed the whole line and the whole idea, which is more than just a toothbrush. So we want to not just to develop the whole line of disposables, but to bring this philosophy of sustainable living to every person's everyday life.
All right, thank you. I'm going to come to you, Lee, now. You know, and I'd appreciate your thoughts on, you know, much the same question. I mean, is the approach that startups should take find a problem and then try and solve it, you know, as opposed to, you know, what we do sometimes see going on, you know, startups will create something and then try and find a problem to solve.
This is for me, sorry.
Sorry, it was for Lee, but you're more than welcome to come back in a minute, Dasha. Sorry, over to you, Lee.
Okay, thanks, Greg. First, thank you very much for having me here. My name is Li Xu. I'm the managing partner for Li LXI Capital. Just a little bit background. I'm a Chinese American currently living and working from Europe. So that gives you a little bit of insight what I'm going to say. So to answer your question, are the startup to start out their ideas from the problems? I would say, based on the company we worked with in the past, we see both sides. Some started with problems, trying to find solutions. Some started with some ideas, think they are going to find market eventually. The company start with problems. I think that, you know, that's the initial idea stage when they have a problem want to solve. But then at the end of the day, no matter what they do, eventually we have to commercialize in the real life market. So the initial problem adjust over the time along, you know, during the phase of a capital raise and also during the phase of the this testing market. So the day one, the problem they find might be totally different at by the time they actually reach the market. So that's what I'm gonna say. Thanks.
All right, David Gilger, I'm going to come over to you there in the studio now. I mean, from the VC side of things, you know, I mean, how do you see it? Do you think that there is, you know, enough awareness amongst the tech community, you know, people who are, you know, creating all of these innovations that, you know, that there are real opportunities here, that tech for net zero is actually an opportunity?
I'm David. I'm a partner of the of founders our audience today, and we invest in early stage communities. And over the past 6 months, we had this very interesting insight whereby our team is focused specifically on eco-alternative energy, what's called green startups in the UK and Europe. And I don't have a single answer to this question, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, I don't think there is a single answer. So,
yeah.
You know,
So let's remember, you know, some of the greatest innovations, they were powerful, but lead and petrol, that was a great innovation. That was the startup of those days. Fracking, that's a pretty great innovation from a technical point of view. The problem from the VC side of things is how do we measure what is success? Because quite frankly, once we drop all the terms, all the great aspirations too frequently, comes down to money, comes down to returns, and in the ideal world, we would have startups that are doing the right thing, they're pursuing the right goals that are right for the planet, for humanity, for the health, for the global health. In the long term, they'll coincide with the commercial returns and the free market, that sort of thing. But the reality, it's not the case. So I think the government has a critical role to play to encourage in many ways to create the market that incentivizes both the VC side of things and the startups to pursue the goals that otherwise may not commercially be viable. This opens up a whole different can of worms. And this what we're seeing in the UK. Pretty much every startup, every single startup we met, they had some sort of government grant behind them, and not, regretful to say, not that many of them had substance. So there is obviously a fine-tuned balance that needs to be found. And I think the good news is that we are talking about it. It's a real issue, and hopefully it will lead us to this brighter future where VCs investing in a startup that is trying to save the world, for a better term, and benefit the ecosystem again commercially. But let's not make it say we are at the very start. It's close.
All right. Thank you. I mean, Techiia, I'm going to come back to you. I mean, a startup, how do you take something, that starts local, that starts small? I mean, how do you then take that global, something that's going to make a real difference? What do you see as being the key things that are needed? Does it begin with an idea that the startup has to think big from the outset? I mean, is that the key to it?
Yeah, thank you for this wonderful question. As I think it's really important for every startup to understand that the previous speakers, I totally agree with them, and is that the main point for a startup is fast growth, sales, and if you are making eco-friendly startup, if you are making something in sustainability, you will actually change something in climate change or in different things, in like plastic fights and whatsoever, if your product will be sold globally. Only that way you will solve something and you will bring an impact. So that is how, our goals from very beginning of EFA, when we just started, our goals was to sell to big companies, to partner with huge companies, to make a global approach for that, not to be a local, tiny startup that will solve a tiny problem for example, in Kiev in Ukraine. That is why we have started from partnership with Netflix, with Marriott Hotels, with Radisson Hotels. Here in Ukraine, we're also working with companies who are working globally, helping us with distribution chain, with manufacturing, with sales and whatsoever. It is there's a problem with startups. They love their idea so much that they don't want to share it with anyone. And they're afraid that everybody will steal their idea and the horrible thing will happen. That doesn't happen a lot. And I think that startups have to partner, have to come out and talk with big companies, because they can help us, they can help startups to grow faster and to make a global impact, not to be not to be an institutional project of some research or something like this. In the end of the day, you have to make business out of it. You have to make money out of it in order to get investments, in order to grow and to be a normal corporation and a business. That's how you can do that.
All right, thank you. I mean, Lee, I saw you, smiling and nodding there. You're clearly in agreement. I mean, have you got something to share on this?
Well, I should not say agree or not agree. I'm just happy to hear what she said. Companies trying to start with the local, because on my side, what I often see is a startup wants to be global since day one, before they even have anything to show the world. And I always tell them, focus on your local market first, and build some track record, some foundation. With that, then you go to the regional or global market, because from outside we want to see, okay, yes, great idea, but have you done anything like that before? Does it work, right? Before we invest in a region, we have no idea yet. So the key is, I always tell other people, and myself is also starting my business from scratch. My suggestion is always try your best to build a track record in the local market first, and then use that as your base and foundation. Try other markets, and then when you go to other markets, a couple of things you have to consider. One is culture difference. So from emerging Europe, probably it's easier to go to, say Western Europe or UK side, and then there might be huge demand from Asian market with the population growth, both China and India, and also super wealth from the Middle East. However, the country work with it, even the market potentials are huge. And she mentioned the stock market concern about other companies to copy. So no, because we're dealing with IP issue all the time, and of course we do need IP for certain things. But my personal belief is you have to invent and grow fast to the point. Don't worry about IP issue, because people will copy you. I'm not too concerned about the large companies, like conglomerate companies. Typically, they acquire once you reach into certain stages. Invent from very beginning idea is not their strategy. However, you might need to be concerned with other startup who can copy you faster, who already have a team and market access, and they just they either buy you out or copy you much faster. So that's something you might need to consider. Yeah.
All right. All right, thanks. David in the studio there, I'm going to come back to you. This perspective of, local against global, I mean, is it the case that, some climate tech startups are too localized, however, given what we've just heard? I mean, is there a danger of that they're even, not necessarily too localized, but perhaps too specialized, to offer a meaningful solution? What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a very real danger of that. And I guess it would depend also on your local market. So if your local market is China, US, India, then you're in a very strong place with a huge market, and indeed you can make a genuine worldwide impact because these countries are some of the most significant CO2 emitters. However, if, let's say, for example, Russia in Ukraine, it's too easy to become very specialized, really good startup synthesis. Tons of Ukrainian startups. Your starting point is becoming the point where you're stuck for years and years. You become better and better at solving global issues. And it's not only about Ukraine. I travel throughout the UK, and we see many startups, especially those that are encouraged by government grants, especially global government grants. They become real great specialists at solving not even the UK problem, but a regional problem in the UK, and years go by and they never move on to that global level. Well, I think it comes down to what is your starting point and the discipline. There's nothing wrong with starting with a small market and building that experience and that traction. But as a founder, I think it's advisable to be really aware of the dangers of being sucked into your comfort zone, being able then to move on to larger markets, and then indeed becoming a global position.
All right. Well, I mean, one of the challenges that startups face when they do want to come out of the comfort zone is, if you like, is finding money. It's finding funds. It's finding finance. It's finding the money to grow. So let's look at that a little bit. Dasha, I'm going to ask you. Maybe tell us a bit about EFA's funding journey. How was it for you guys?
That was a roller coaster for us. That was, as for any other startup, I think. So EFA has raised both governmental money and angel investment, not VC, but angel investment. Last year, we have closed the financial round of $500,000 from the angel investor, and we have raised a smaller amount of $50,000 from Ukrainian government. Sorry.
I know, I'm not sure where that space is coming from. I don't know if anybody can hear it, but we're getting a space noise every 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, and it's really, I think it's really important for startup, especially in the sustainability area, to understand that you need a really smart money to rise your to grow your company, because it's a really sensitive and pretty hard area to work on, especially like for us, we're having a hardware or consumer product, not a software. Most of the VC funds are mostly oriented on software companies because they are showing the faster growth. They're like developing much more faster than hardware companies. That is why it's pretty challenging to find the smart money that can actually help you. As I always like say, and for us, for our team and for other startups, that money for a startup is not the point of existence, is a tool for faster development. And everybody has to understand that startup can develop without investment money, but it will be slower than with the investor. And you always have to understand it. And that's startup's approach for looking for money and for talking with investors, because you have to like getting money from VC fund or angel investors, like getting married, and you have to be really careful when choosing the right investor, when talking with the right people, and about the governmental money as well. It's a really good tool for a very early stage startups to get the first funds, not to get any equity for this, like major grants are given equity free. But these grants are also really focused, as David said, they're really focused on, most of them are really focused on the regional development, on the development in your country, in your region, in like your area. And startup has to think global. So that's also the thing that you have to understand with the team and with your strategy of development of a startup. What do you need? Global exposure and fast growth. Then you have to look for the VCs. If you want to stay regional and solve the problem in your city or country, then you have to look for grants or governmental tools for the development.
Lee, I'm going to ask you, from the other side of you, Dasha said that, startups have to find the right investor. I mean, how do investors find the right startup?
Well, I think it's almost like getting married. In a way, it's the same process. You have to go to meet as many people as you first have to do homework. I used to do a lot of in-person networking before COVID, but then COVID forced me to do a lot of research at home. So it doesn't matter which side you are at. Sorry, some background noise from the office here. So it doesn't matter which side you're on, the startup side need the money or the fund side need a startup. It's always a lot of research. So know the market, know the audience, and then know what you want first, because all the money has certain criteria, what company they can invest, who they want to work with, and the startup same way. They know what each money is different. So government money has its own agenda, and then it doesn't matter regional or local. And also the VC has its own mandates as well. Some take majority, some only take minority. Some sit on the board, have a seat, and then strategic definitely wants your licensing. That's just and also distribution rights. So each capital has its own you can say character or nature. So you have to understand what investor what type of investor are, what they're looking for. And as a startup, all I can say is almost like you optimize the capital in the market globally, and you have to design what kind of capital for each stage of your business operation and growth. And then, kind of just know what you want and then look for it, and then just talk as many people as you want. And normally what I always do is first come, first serve, because from capital side is, I'm interested, I love your idea, I love your company, love the team, but then they never cut check, right? So that happens all the time. And then that drain you. I mean, the only thing you have right now is time and energy. And it's the only thing you cannot afford is to lose your time and energy. So you have to be very clear what you want, and then also very good with negotiation. And also the other thing I want to say is many funds, there's a huge difference between the funds with fund sitting in the bank account versus the company was committed but not funded. So oftentimes when you're dealing with international investors, say, oh yeah, we love you a project, or we want to invest at this, give you very glory promise number, but they just cannot deploy capital, because what they need to do, they either need to go back to their LP to raise money, or the money probably in a country with capital restrictions to leave the country. So you have to be aware what kind of capital available on the market, and then know what to look for, and then go from there.
All right, thanks, David. I'm just going to come back to you now for the final point. You know, from the VC's perspective, you know, a question really. I mean, are traditional VCs equipped to, you know, invest and support in, you know, this new crop of startups who are, you know, tackling specific problems, you know, tied to climate change?
Thanks a lot. And that's a really interesting question. One of the things that I come across, and I'm actually a subscriber to this idea as well, is that as an investor, as a VC, we should start splitting social development goals from the returns. And in an ideal scenario, this should be a package where you're not looking at startups. You know, usually when you look at startup debt, you have, okay, here is a slide on the return, and this is the slide on the social impact you have goals that you're responding to it. And there is no reason why these two factors should be separated, but they are. And one of the reasons is that the VC community, in my opinion, is that, you know, I come at it from an early stage. We don't have language yet to describe what kind of goals do we want when it comes to financial gains and social ones. So in that way, I don't think VCs are particularly well equipped to evaluate the startup whose impact may, you know, be 2 tenets financial and 8 tenets social, which will result in a great local eco-development that may come in 6, 7, 8, 10 years down the line. I think that there is a great shift, there is a change. The change at the moment is driven mainly from later stage, larger funds. That's in great development, even in pension funds in Australia, on that side of things, where social side, the eco side is becoming mainstream. This has to trickle down to the smaller VCs, to the earlier investors, such as ourselves. But at the moment, this is a subject which is of intense debate for ourselves in the wake, and I know it is a subject that is of intense debate in a good sense and of intense interest to our peers. Because quite frankly, at the moment, no, we are not that well equipped to evaluate, judge, assess a startup that offers a genuine mix of financial returns and social and eco-green social development goals returns in much longer term. But this is something that is on the top of our priority, on top of what to do with this. And I find it actually quite exciting, it's almost like learning a new language.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Dasha. We have to leave it there, unfortunately. We have our next panel lined up. I'm going to hand back to Andrew now in London. So thank you for joining us, everyone, and look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All the participants now. I am going to invite my panelists joining me here in London in a second for the final session. It's interesting times that we live in now, I have to say. And yesterday I was supposed to be joined in person by 3 panelists. Today I only have 1 joining me in person. The other 2 panelists are joining online due to the most recent development, and I think everyone here based in London has heard of what is happening to the pandemic, or with the pandemic right now. So without further ado, I would like to invite my 2 panelists online, and we have Jana from Tech UK. We have Tom Attenborough from the London Stock Exchange, and joining me here in person we have Russ Shaw, the founder of Global Tech Advocates and London Tech Advocates. It's great to have you here in person, and of course, it's great to have you joining us online. So this, I'm going to take a seat this time. So it's really interesting to be looking at the most recent developments, like I said. And just a couple of weeks ago, we witnessed a huge event in Glasgow, COP26. An event like that hasn't happened for 5 years, or actually 6 years, because the last one took place in Paris in 2015. So what I would like to focus on in this last session for today would be to see how emerging European startups can join forces with the UK and perhaps learn from the UK to go global, basically, or go global and develop their solutions that can help plenty of different people use them. So I would like to start with Russ, who's actually here with me. I know that our community, and I'm talking about global tech advocates and in particular, tech London advocates, tech Scotland advocates as well, was particularly involved in what was going on in Glasgow. So if you can start by telling us what the key takeaways have been since that, from that event.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you for having me, and congratulations to you and Diana for a great Tech Emerging Europe Advocates event on Tech for Net Zero. Maybe if I can just take a little step backwards. Obviously, our Tech Scotland Advocates group was broadcasting live from COP26 on the 3rd of November. But if you look at it prior to that, we've done events throughout the year. We have a big investor showcase event back in June. We had all of our TTA leaders together. You were part of this during London Tech Week to talk about Tech for Net Zero and the world. Our groups in the Americas did their own event at the end of October. So we've seen a lot of activity, not just here in London, but in many of our tech hubs around the world, really trying to grips with what can tech do. And I think we've also conducted our own surveys of the community, and we've got a great resource. So a lot of initiatives underway, and I guess that's one of the key learnings for me throughout all of this has been the importance of measurement and data. And when we did our survey of advocates about 5 or 6 months ago, 59% said we're really not even measuring their impact on tech net zero, and they really need to do so. So first and foremost, it's about looking at whether you're a small startup or scaling business or a large corporate, how are you measuring your own environmental impact? Are you looking at the data, and then how are you taking that data to drive your action plan? I think if there's one key learning that I'm hearing across many of our groups globally, even a little bit here today, it's that point.
I totally agree here, and that's really important also in the sort of health tech area, because over the last 2 years we've seen how collecting statistics related to health has been important. But what you said about understanding your own carbon footprint, that is something that a lot of companies have absolutely no idea about and how to measure. We're pointing to that in the Future of Sustainability report that we released last week. And it oftentimes is that companies are only aware of perhaps 10% of their carbon footprint, and there's a lot of room for improvement. So going back to Scotland and Glasgow, what have been the key sort of goals that tech has now, in front of, or we're talking about different countries, and what can tech do to contribute to lowering that carbon footprint?
I think tech has a very important leadership role in terms of how do we model, how do we show the way forward terms of driving a tech net zero agenda. And I think, I'm listening to some of the comments earlier, no matter how small your business, your 2 or 3 person startup, you have a role to play. Collectively have a role to play in all of this. And I think the other thing that we kind of coming out of COP26 for us has been the messages of a lot of the technology to solve the problem already exists. Yes, there's new stuff that we need to work on, looking at carbon capture and storage and how do you better leverage hydrogen solutions. There's a lot that needs to be done there, but many of the technologies already exist today. I think our challenge as a tech sector ecosystem is how do we get the funding we need to really accelerate many of these businesses, which is why I thought the previous session was really, really helpful. How do we get investors behind this in a bigger, bolder way? How do we really ramp this up? And the other thing is, how do we share best practices and examples and ideas from hub to hub so that, we're not all starting from scratch, but we're getting behind a good idea that might be coming out of Mexico. Our guys who run Tech Mexico Advocates have done a fantastic job with the business that they have. They're coming here to Europe to expand their business. Let's get behind that. What's going on in parts of Eastern Europe and Ukraine? I was at an event with David last week with DTEC, a energy company, private energy company in Ukraine, coming to London to look for innovation and ideas to really help them in this particular space. That is where I think our hubs and ideas can really come together. Say, the ideas and the solutions are largely out there today. Let's really ramp up our activity.
It's interesting what you said about the company based out of Ukraine that is also inviting startups from countries like the UK. So that is actually a very good point for you to start the broader discussion about Central and Eastern Europe and the UK. So I would like to involve both Tom and Jana right now to tell us what particular, what is here in the UK that Central and Eastern Europe can learn from. Can I start with Jana?
Yes, of course. Can you hear me well? Just to Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Jana Psarska, as Andrew mentioned, and I'm policy manager for international trade at Tech UK. Tech UK is UK's leading technology trade association, and we have 21 plus programs. One of them is a sustainability program. And in this program, we actually engage green tech, climate tech companies. And going back to your question, why actually? Okay.
We're talking about technology, and technology always always tricky.
Perfect. Just going back to your question, why actually the UK is doing well in clean tech, and how actually the UK can help maybe some companies in emerging Europe, in Central and Eastern Europe to innovate, and how we can actually, what they can learn from the UK. So I think why the UK is leading in clean tech and will be leading actually in green trade and green tech solutions comes down to two factors. As Raz mentioned, technology is a key denominator and will be crucial in actually meeting net zero targets. Technology solutions, and that has already been acknowledged, whether that was at COP26, but also before, technology solutions will be really important to driving that change. And that includes AI, blockchain, cloud, and many other solutions or tech solutions that are probably not even available at the moment. And speaking of AI, cloud, blockchain, the UK is actually leading in these tech markets. And that again comes down to a number of factors: investment in research, leading universities, thriving tech ecosystems in these tech markets. And another factor is definitely, UK was the first country in 2019 that made a legal commitment to actually become net zero by 2050. And the following year, the Prime Minister announced a 10-point plan on how to actually get there, on what we will be doing in order to kind of, make green industrial revolution happen. And that included actually significant investment into R&D, but also into commercialization of some of the green technologies. Because obviously, in my view, in order to kind of make things happen and in order to for the technology or any actually technology ecosystem to thrive, you need three main ingredients, and that's finance. Secondly, that's research, scientists, and thirdly, that's commercialization. You need to support entrepreneurs, and I'm sure Tom will speak about it later. The UK and the City of London, green finance, that's definitely something that we are experts on. So we need those resources to actually, obviously, we need resources going into green investments, into green projects. But at the same time, we need scientists, we need innovation. And the UK government made actually commitments to increase R&D, to increase actually share of GDP going into R&D to nearly 3% by 2030, if I'm not mistaken. But we need to also focus on commercialization. And that's where actually regulators, policymakers, and businesses need to work together in order to put mechanisms and tools into place so we can actually bring these innovations, these new solutions to market. And we can't really wait 10, 20 years. We need to commercialize those solutions as soon as possible. So I think those three kind of elements, denominators that we really need in order to make green trade, green tech happen and put it into practice as soon as possible. And I think the UK has everything in place, can actually draw on its expertise in regulation, as it's doing really very well in other tech sectors, whether it's AI, fintech, and so on, can definitely draw on its expertise in green finance, in finance sector. And I think that's what is definitely driving green or low carbon technologies here in the UK and creates such a thriving ecosystem in this area. And obviously that creates a lot of opportunities for other companies either come here to set up their business and become a part of that ecosystem, become a part of those tech clusters that create the opportunities for knowledge spillovers and so on. Or maybe there is an opportunity to also create innovation partnerships, collaboration opportunities on a G2G basis or through the platforms like this. And I think I'll stop here. I've been speaking for a bit, and I'm keen to hear also Tom's take on this topic. Andrew, I can't hear you. Not sure. Tom, can you hear him?
I can't hear Andrew, no.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Andrew, we can't hear anything here online.
No, we can't.
Andrew, I can't hear you, but can you hear us? Okay, great. Well, I haven't heard the last sort of minute and a half, but perhaps I can just say a few things, and you can just, by sign language, let me know whether I'm hitting the right spots or not. Look, first of all, I do apologise for not being there in person. Andrew, don't take it personally. This is not strictly COVID related. I just woke up today with a pretty filthy cold and cough and didn't think that was something that needed inflicting on the rest of the room. So many apologies, and to have to be doing this virtually when I'm not very far away physically, but anyway, there we go. I think Jana's raised a number of really interesting points about the strength of the London ecosystem to help support companies in this space. And I think just to reiterate a couple of points, I think this sits right in the centre of three things that London does really well. Firstly, tech. I think as we spend a lot of time talking about at the London Stock Exchange, we've been a bit down on ourselves at times about the strength of the UK tech market compared to other parts of the world, particularly the US. But I think we've seen this year a really vibrant funding system for tech. It's been nearly half of the volume we've seen in IPOs in the London market in tech and consumer internet this year. So I think that is something that is increasingly a real strength we can point to and evidence. Secondly, the point Jana made about green finance, absolutely critical. I think the London market has made real steps forward in the last 36 months and tried to take a leading role, whether it's on green bonds, whether it's the launch of the Green Economy Mark, which differentiates companies that contribute with over 50% of their revenues directly impacting the green economy. Whether it's transition bonds, there's an ecosystem here and an investor base that really wants to deploy more capital into these areas. And we're starting to see that. We now have 108 Green Economy Mark issuers here in the London market, in the listed market, which have, if you track back 5 years, have outperformed the FTSE All-Share by 110%. Now, whether that is all because they are better businesses or because there's greater capital chasing those opportunities, it's arguably going to be a little bit of both. But I think that just underscores the weight of capital that wants to be putting more into these areas. And this is only going to increase. We've seen some of the data about the generation wealth effects that we're seeing at the moment. So I think that the stat I saw, which is I always think of, which is simply staggering, is that globally we expect $70 trillion to be inherited by millennials from effectively the baby boomer generation by 2030. And these are investors who really care about this stuff. And so therefore we're going to be seeing increasing desire to participate directly, not just in things that are growing and exciting, but things that are really doing good for society and for the broader economy. I think, I only have to look at my children to see that working in action. I get beaten up by my children the whole time about things that are in our shopping basket that they want to know more about where it's come from and questions that historically we've grown up not asking ourselves. And that is, I think, only going to increase. So I think this is a real opportunity for, to focus in the crosshairs here about what London does really well. The third piece is its international nature, of course. And that's something that, will be very familiar to everyone in the room. But, 40% of the companies that list in London are international businesses. We already support a number of Central and Eastern European businesses. We've had a couple of Eastern European tech businesses join this year, whether it's Eurowag in the Czech Republic, whether it's Softline out of Russia. I think as some of the names we saw in the panel before and some of the really exciting climate tech, more specific focused companies from the region look to want to come, they're going to sit in a very neat crosshairs, as I say, with the UK and the London ecosystem wanting to invest in international stars, tech and growth, and companies and issuers that contribute very directly to the green economy. So I think a good place to be, and I'm sure we'll see more support to come.
When entering the UK or setting up a shop here to benefit from that?
Sorry, Andrew, we only got you very faintly for the last few seconds.
Try again.
So Jana, just a question to you. Sorry,
I can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
okay.
So a quick question about the government support for startups that are here in the UK and want to set up shop here, and what kind of support they can count on from the government.
So there is definitely a range of tools and financial mechanisms that are designed to actually attract foreign startups, overseas companies that are looking to set up their business in the UK, and then also help them to grow. So there are number of grants and financial support. Also, obviously, off top of my head, I wanna have them all. And companies that are interested actually in learning more about the support that is available here in the UK, government support mainly, I encourage them to actually contact the maybe British Embassy in the respective markets and their DIT department, because they will have that information. But what I can say is also that the companies, innovative companies, obviously London is a kind of big magnet for them. But I would kind of encourage them to also look at other regions, depending on their area of expertise, on which market they are active, tech market they are active in, whether it's fintech, clean tech, or any other markets. Really do research which actually tech ecosystem, whether that's Bristol, Manchester, or Liverpool, might suit your needs better. Because very often, actually, government support is targeting also other regions rather than London and Southeast England. So I just wanted to raise that point that there are great opportunities also in other parts of the UK.
Thank you very much for that. So it's not only London, but also Manchester and Bristol and other parts of the UK. Now, my final question to you guys, and this question is a little bit, looking at the whole situation from a different perspective. We usually, and this is what we talked about during this panel, we usually look at Central and Eastern European startups perhaps seeking financing or funding in the UK. Can you think of ways of increased collaboration between Central and Eastern Europe, but on the basis of some sort of partnership? So it's not, it's not going one way only, but it's kind of benefiting or perhaps learning from each other. And I think that the example that Russ mentioned earlier, that we have initiatives already that are not only, it's not only the UK that is kind of providing financing, but there is a company in Ukraine, for instance, that wants to attract innovative solutions in sustainability. Is there anything like that you can come up with, or that you can think of at this stage, that we could sort of see Central and Eastern Europe and the UK as more of partners? And this is an open question, so whoever is ready to answer can take it.
I can go first. So Central and East European countries, many of them still very heavily rely on coal or other sort of non-sustainable sources of energy. Obviously, the transitioning is happening also in those countries, and I think in order to transition these industries, technologies are very much needed, because obviously just to phase out coal industry, that might take a couple of years, but what we can do now is to make it more sustainable. And obviously many other enterprises and industries in Central and Eastern European countries are also trying to kind of become more greener. So what we could do, and we actually see it already happening in other countries, for example, Japan. Japan has actually kind of launched a project, Society 5.5, where the government identify sort of key challenges for the Japan to become net zero, or sort of key goals, key objectives for it to become net zero by 2050 or 2060. And actually it launched a series of reverse pitching sessions. So Japanese multinationals actually pitch their challenges to overseas startups. So I believe we could do something similar here in the UK, identify maybe common challenges, and then big companies that are trying to meet those challenges, whether it's just kind of looking for new suppliers, or actually they're trying to become more carbon neutral themselves. They can pitch their challenges to innovative overseas markets. So, and the same can happen in Central Eastern European countries. Enterprises or industries, companies that are looking for innovative partners in the clean tech space can actually pitch their projects or challenges to UK startups. So I think reverse pitching sessions could work, or dance sessions, some sort of having a range of companies, innovative companies, pitching their solutions to a panel of judges. So I think this could work well, and we can do it obviously in virtual space through the platform like this, or just build it from scratch. And we don't really need government support to organize B2B exchanges. It just really kind of it comes down to players like ourselves to identify those challenges and companies that might be interested.
Thank you very much. Tom, would you like to add something to it?
Yeah, perhaps just a couple of things. I think, first of all, with the sort of access to finance that London can provide, clearly there are huge benefits that can bring back home. Sorry, it's a bit of an echo. In terms of employment, tax revenues, etc. So I think even that access to finance, arguably is a win-win. Where we are seeing a lot of companies go one step further is to say, look, I want to raise capital where I feel that the ecosystem understands me best, where the investor base is the largest pool. But I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that I'm a national champion. I can be a real beacon for, hope in my home market as well. And, I've been in the equity capital markets for the best part of 30 years now. And what's been really interesting is you've had this whole cycle that's moved away from companies doing dual listings, for example, consolidating it into sort of one line, to actually over the last sort of 2 or 3 years acknowledging that actually there are benefits from A, having access to local institutions and retail, and B, the bigger pool an international listing may bring. So I think that is definitely one very concrete area where we can see win-win solutions. The third thing I'd say is that I think where London can play a really leading role over time is around things like harmonization of standards and that whole education around around green economy, sustainability, ESG standards that investors expect. And in fact, that's something that I think over the next year or two, the London Stock Exchange is going to be really trying to take the whole plethora of different reporting requirements that exist around the world on different exchanges, other stakeholders like the UN, etc., and try and work to sort of harmonise that into one consistent set of standards, which I think will be of benefit to all markets. So there's just a few sort of direct sort of win-wins I can see coming out.
Thank you very much. Russ, I started with you, and I'm going to wrap up with you. So what's your take on that?
Well, I think there's enormous opportunity for collaboration between the UK, Central and Eastern Europe, and other parts of Asia, where we can learn from each other. Nobody has the answer to all of these questions. The UK has gone through a transition away from coal. Poland needs to go through that. We can learn from other countries in terms of what are they doing in spaces like agritech, robotics. Ukraine is a big food producer. What can we learn from them that we can apply here? So it's facilitating that two-way behavior that I think is really key. But then also it's around the cultural change that frankly we all need to go through together. And I think organizations like Techiia advocates and local tech advocates and tech funded advocates, coupled with Techiia and other players in the ecosystem, we have the convening power to bring these communities together. You guys are doing a great job featuring lots of startups in the whole area. We're doing the same thing here. How can we convene us and talk about the ideas, the best practices, so that we're collectively learning from each other? That doesn't cost a lot other than our time and getting together and doing hybrid events and things like that. That is the opportunity that I think sits ahead of us to really make a difference. But we have to remember the clock is ticking. To move quickly, it's going to be tougher and tougher to make these changes.
And I believe we have to be open, basically, to whatever is coming from other less known countries, places, cities, maybe. And like you said, global tech activism and also emerging Europe and emerging Europe helps do that. Thank you very much for joining us for this session. I just wanted to wrap up briefly the whole event right now. Just to summarize, Emerging Europe Advocates officially launched last year on the 24th of November. So the community of tech entrepreneurs from Central and Eastern Europe is officially 1 year old right now, but we developed quite significantly. There's almost 200 advocates across Central and Eastern Europe right now. The network is being also expanded by a network of ambassadors, because Tech Emerging Europe Advocates covers 25 different geographies, starting from Slovenia in the southwest, going all the way to Turkmenistan in Central Asia. So that's a huge area. So we wouldn't be able to cover this region without our great ambassadors. So I would like to invite those who haven't yet signed up to become an advocate. To do so, you can find all the information on emerging-europe.com/tech-advocates, and hopefully next year in November for the third meeting of Tech Emerging Europe Advocates, we're going to be able to meet in person. I mean, we have an audience here with us today, but the vast majority of our viewers joined us online. Also, most of our speakers joined us online. Hopefully, this will change next year, and we will be done with the pandemic. Thank you very much for joining us today. I have to be hopeful. I know that nobody expected that. In November 2021, we will still be doing virtual events or at least hybrid events, but we're still not done with the pandemic. So hopefully next year in November for the third TEA meeting, we will be done with that, and we will finally be able to meet in person and share more thoughts in person. Thank you very much for joining us today.